just gone 1 o'clock on my watch, so keen to get started, sort of acknowledging that people have taken some time out of their day to participate in today's boot champ. First of all, welcome. My name's Craig Salter. I'm the founder of Safety Champion Software, and I'll be delighted to deliver the boot champ today. In the room with us is a number of representatives from our customer success team. So if you are seeing other panelists with names that are familiar to you, that's the reason why. With regards to the bootcamp today, what we will be focusing on is the modules beyond the core. And when we talk about the core modules within Safety Champion, we're talking about the incident module, we're talking about the action module, we're talking about the inspection module, we're talking about the safety plan module, and we're also talking about the HR module that includes the training module. So for today, we're putting those modules to the side and we're focusing in on the other modules that are within the system, and we'll touch on them later today. Now, this session's been designed as an immersive experience, so we'll be jumping in between the PowerPoint and we'll also be jumping into the platform to show you how things work. But it's targeted at those organizational users that have responsibility and accountability for deploying Safety Champion across their business and their organization, as well as those administrative users. Now, we won't spend too much time on the administrative side of things and configuration, but we will touch on that in the second half of the session, just so that you're familiar with how you can contextualize the drop-downs within the platform. In relation to our agenda for today, I've got that up on the screen at the moment. So we'll provide a quick system overview for those who are newish to the product, for those who are familiar and jumping in just to understand how some of the other modules work. Bear with us and use this as a bit of a refresher. Same with the system architecture. We'll then go through things that you see, things that you engage with, and as I mentioned, we'll touch on configuration for a brief point in time. We'll go through some little tidbits, some things that you may or may not be aware of, but things that are of focus to us to improve the experience of Safety Champion and ensure that the data that you're seeing at your end is present and correct. We'll then touch on the resources and support. So obviously the sessions in our 2025 training calendar are accessible and live for you to register. But we will also talk about sort of what other support mechanisms are out there so that we can assist yourselves to get the most out of the platform. And then finally, we'll finish off with some questions. Again, if you do have questions through the session, feel free to type them into the comments or the question box. And one of our team in the background will be collating those. And again, they will stop me periodically through today's webinar to resolve those questions where there is a relevance and there's a need. If your question isn't answered today, then we will reach out to you in the background to be able to provide some insights if it's more specific to your needs and your requirements. Before we get started, we'd like to do an acknowledgement to country, acknowledging the traditional owners of the land which we all meet today. I'd also like to pay my respects to elders past and present. In addition to the welcome to country, I'd like to recognise the reason that we're all here. So a lot of us are here in the room today because of our roles in making the workplace safer, providing a work environment where our employees leave at the end of the day better for the work experience. So we'd like to acknowledge where those situations don't necessarily roll out or play out in the day as we expected. We acknowledge that those people who are impacted by workplace injuries and illness, and we acknowledge the effort and the work in that return to work sort of space, not only for them, but their family, their friends and their colleagues that are impacted by the injury that may have occurred at the workplace. Again, as we get started, just really keen to provide people with an overview of our journey and the context as to how we are where we are today. So this is accessible up on our website, but Safety Champion, we started to build this product out in 2015, and it was built out because there was a gap in the market. We identified that there was a need for small, medium and large businesses to have access to a software platform that was configurable at your end so that you were able to make changes to the platform to sort of suit your needs. And we also identified a need for a platform that would come in and provide enterprise features, but at a price point that makes safety software accessible to all. 2015 is when we started that journey. And if we fast forward the clock until today, we've got 2,000 customers globally. And for your confidence, we've gone through the certification process for ISO 27001, which is the information security standard, as well as ISO 9001, which is the quality management standard, so that you can use our platform and can communicate with internal stakeholders that we have your information secure and we're managing our processes in line with best practice from a standard perspective. We are a business that operates out of Melbourne, Victoria, but we have a scope that sort of reaches to South Australia, New South Wales and Queensland at the moment, with some international team members supporting growth in other regions. But our mission of creating making safety easier and accessible to all people, no matter their expertise, underpins everything that we build within the platform. So be certain and be sure that we are focused day in, day out to ensure that our product not only meets your needs and your management's needs from a data sort of analytics and reporting and the configurability of the platform, but we're also intently focused on your end users and how they can use our platform. So how they can report incidents, access registers and light within the platform. So that underpins every decision that we make here as an organisation. In relation to the system overview, this is really important for us to cover off so that it provides some context with regards to how we navigate through this BootChamp today. But as people will be aware, and if you're not, then hopefully this is a great learning opportunity. We are a cloud-based platform that's accessible not only on your PC, but also accessible on your laptop, on your phone, on your tablets. Now, importantly for the phone and tablets, we've built in native Android and iOS apps so that your workers are able to access their platform on their mobile phone in a more streamlined and efficient way. One of the real advantages of the native Android and iOS app is that they work offline, which means that if you have connectivity challenges in your workplace or you have workers who are traveling to remote areas, they're still able to report incidents, they're still able to report hazards, and for the context of today's session, they're still able to access registers such as your documents register and your chemical register. So if there are any SOPs or any SCSs that they need to have access to, that if they've got their phone and they've got their battery charged up, they should be able to access those resources. The modules that we have within platform are presented up on the screen. And like I mentioned, today we will focus on modules outside of the core, and those core modules being the incident, the action, the safety plan, the HR, and the inspections module. So we'll be focusing and touching base on each of these other modules individually. We will look at some as a collective that operate in alignment so that you understand the purpose of the module, but then you'll be able to go away and implement that module internally once you know how it works and how it behaves. In addition to those modules, our platform comes with a number of features. So the configurability is something that's really important and sometimes is missed by clients. So there is the ability for you to configure drop-downs within the predefined create forms, and there's the ability for you to, in some modules, building custom questions so that if there is a category or a subcategory that you've identified that you want to seek more information from, that you can build those questions in. I spoke to you about our ISO certification, but also an added layer of security that we have within the platform is our multi-factor authentication. And that is something that we can add onto your plan if that is a pathway that you would like to go. We have single sign-on through Office 365. So if you are using Office 365 as your web server or your email server, I should say, you can really easily plug into that as a way that people can be able to access your platform. The email notification, again, is configurable. You're able to control what emails people receive. And these emails are sent as tasks approach their deadline date, on their deadline date. And there's also tasks that are set after the deadline date that can act as an escalation within the system if you need certain stakeholders to know that tasks haven't been closed out. Now, from a system architecture side of things, and this is super important for today, because when we start to look at one of the real advantages of a cluster of these modules, it's the fact that you can manage them at an organizational level and share view or access rights at the workplace. And that's based on the architecture and how you set the system up. So if we look at the 4 levels, and this is a very simplistic view, we have customers who will shift and adjust this depending on what their needs are. But as a generic sort of initial sort of conversation point, this is a great sort of place to start. So at the top that's circled red is our organizational admin, and the organizational admin is where you configure the platform and where you create users. This is, as it says, it's the administrative component of the system. And this is where clients are likely to limit access to this point only to stakeholders who have the right knowledge and the right access rights to be able to make changes and adjustments here. Sitting below that is our organizational level, and our organizational level is the focus of the user group in today's session. So at the organizational level, we can set users up so they've got visibility of all workplaces, or to the right that's with the dotted line, we can set those organizational users up so they've got access to a subset of workplaces. So think about clients where there might be state sort of managers, there might be different brands or businesses, there may be regional managers. This is where we can sort of provide access to limited workplaces based on what their needs and their requirements are. The organizational user for today is we're going to be talking through how that user is able to create records within the system and then share them to the workplaces below, depending on what their needs and requirements are. When we drop from the organizational level to the workplace level, again, this is a subsection of your greater sort of safety requirement within your organization. So this is it may be a fixed location, it may be a fixed department, depending on what your needs and requirements are. This is where localized registers can be stored and localized activities can be captured. So this workplace level user is somebody that is, again, of a high level of access within the platform. These are the people who are going to be capturing your health and safety records. These are the people that you've empowered, for the most part, on occasion to make decisions for the business. Sitting beneath the workplace level access is the worker level, and our worker level are people within your organization who need to report an incident or a hazard, again, within the core, or for the purpose of today's session, these are the people who need to be able to access a chemical, access a document, access your risk register. And these are typically view permissions, so they've got visibility of that record. Now, there's a child-parent relationship in here, so what the organization can see will determine what the workplace can see. What the workplace can see will determine what the worker level users can see. If a worker level signs something off within the platform, then that will be available to the workplace user as well as the organizational user. So there's that child-parent relationship, as I touched on beforehand, that is fundamental to how our system architecture works. With regards to how we've constructed our modules, what we did a couple of years ago is try to group them into ways that they operate or ways that they work. And this is where this slide sort of here talks about modules by things. So we've got things that you report. So these are two-stage workflows where we report an incident or we report a hazard, and then we investigate and close it, and then it's finalized. We've got things that you do. So inspections and safety plans. And safety plans, for those who may not be familiar with this area, are things like recurring meetings. It might be preventative maintenance. It's things that happen on a weekly, monthly, annual cycle within the system. But where the things that you do are different from the things that you see is that when we create the template and we assign that template down to the workplaces, it creates tasks for those workplaces. So we want the workplace to provide the record of the sign-off. If we jump down to things that you see and things that you engage with, these are the cluster of modules that today's session will walk you through. So things that you see are our incident register, our corporate risk register, your document library, your equipment and asset register, and insurance and registrations. We also have training that sits in this bucket, but we've taken training out of today with it being a core module. So these modules here, and we'll touch on it as we go through the session, operate with you as the organizational user, creating a record. So uploading a safety data sheet, for example, if I look at the module top on that list there, and then assigning that to the workplaces who need to have access to that safety data sheet. So rather than each of the sites having to manage the safety data sheet, you're able to manage that at a centralized level. And when you update it at the organizational level, those updates will flow down into the workplace. So for people who aren't familiar with that, hopefully you're starting to think about efficiencies in administration, where internal process at the moment may see you source the updated SDS, but then email it out to the sites, for the sites to then print the SDS off, for the sites to then find the register, for the sites then to remove the obsolete SDS, and for the sites to then put the updated SDS into the folder. So this cluster of modules here is what we call those modules that sit sort of under that category of things that you see. We then have a module that sits under the cluster of things that you engage with. And this includes the communication module, the contractor module, data analytics, human resources, which we will take out of today's with that sitting in the core module cluster, notice board, and site attendance, or the visitor module. So these modules that sit in this pile are modules where there aren't any tasks that are created. And when we talk about tasks, what we're referring to here are tasks that sit on this active register list. So there are no communication tasks, contractor tasks, notice board tasks, safety, site attendance plan tasks that sit on this register. There is some activity which we'll touch on that occurs with these modules, but it's not task-based activity. So this will be the focus for today. We will initially go through the things that you see as a cluster, and then what we'll do is we'll jump into the things that you engage with. I will treat them as clusters for the things that you see just to be efficient with time today. The way that we create a chemical record or create a corporate risk or create a document or create equipment asset or create insurance is the same for the most part. The way that we assign or allocate is the same. So assignment is when we assign the sign-off to a particular user. Allocation is when we say what workplaces need to be able to access that record. So again, there's consistency in the way that these behave. So if you get a hold of how the document module works, then you'll be able to jump in and you'll be able to then guide yourself through how chemical module works, how equipment module works, and so forth. With the things that you engage with, these modules are quite different. So we'll spend a little bit of time going into each one independently, and I'll jump into the system to walk you through the nuances of each of those modules. So as I mentioned, what we will start with will be things that you see. So again, we're going to look at all things chemical, corporate risk, document, equipment, asset, assurance, insurance. And these are single tasks with an ongoing workflow. So when we load the task at the organizational level and we allocate it down to the workplaces, it creates one task for the organization to manage, which then filters through to those workplaces when the task or activity is updated at the organizational level. And that will continue until you determine to either one, archive the task, or B, delete the record out of the system. So with these modules, what will they help you achieve? And it's obviously an important question for you to to understand, so that it sort of drives your ability to roll it out and sort of sell it to the organization as to why you may want to change from current practices into using Safety Champion. So first of all, it will provide a single source of truth. Again, you'll be able to control who can update the document or the SDS or the risk within the platform through the permission hierarchy within the system. So again, this means that you're not having people who are going to a SharePoint drive to download a document and there's 3 versions of the document and people aren't sure which is the most current version. This allows people to log into Safety Champion and there will be that one version, the most current version accessible to them, and we will store version 2 and version 3, or sorry, version 1 and version 2 in the background. Importantly, everybody has a phone. So what this also will allow you to achieve is pocket access to policies, procedures, and registers. So any one of your workers who is out in the field or any of your workers who are anywhere will be able to easily access your safety management system if you start to run some of these functions through the appropriate module. And the other thing these modules will do is help you extend your system to beyond health and safety. So if you are using some of these modules at the moment, one thing I would encourage you to think about is, can we go further than safety? So if you're using the documents module to manage your safety policies and procedures and your operating, like safe operating procedures, are there other areas that you may be able to use the system for? Is this where your HR documentation, sort of policies and procedures that you want your employees to have access to could be stored? Is this where sales information may be stored? Is this where your customer success policies and procedures can be captured within the platform? So the platform allows you to not necessarily just limit yourself to health and safety, but broadly speaking, will help you manage the operations within your organization. From a functionality overview, and again, I've touched on this a couple of times intentionally beforehand because this is critical. If you understand this slide, then it will make it very easy for you to implement within your organization. So in these modules, as I mentioned, one task is created. If we upload the safety data sheet at the organizational level and we share it with the workplaces, we only create one task. If we were to create tasks for each of the workplaces that we allocated the task to, again, there would be administrative time that's wasted. So this module, it's important to remember, it's one task and we share view permissions. Now, there is the ability for workplaces to upload their own documents and their own chemicals. If records are uploaded at the workplace level, they belong to the workplace and they can't be shared with other workplaces. So if we use a chemical sort of SDS as the example there, if we upload the SDS at the organizational level and share it with these 2 workplaces, we only have to upload it once. And when we update it at this level, it will update automatically for the 2 workplaces. If we don't use this function and instead we ask the workplaces to upload their SDS, so they upload it at this workplace and they upload it at the other workplace, even if it's the same document, we're creating tasks for each workplace. So workplace 1 and workplace 2 here will both have the task to upload the chemical. So this organizational view access is pivotal to reducing the admin, but also ensuring there's consistency in the information shared across your organization. In this module, the workflow is ongoing. So what we mean by that is if I upload a record, if it's a document, if it's a risk, if it's a chemical, when I sign off that document, that risk, that chemical, if I put in the next expiry date, the system will automatically generate a task in the future for that document, record, or risk to be reviewed. So you're not having to go back into the system and reschedule things. All that scheduling is managed through the platform. I touched on just beforehand, but the task sits where the thing is created. So if we create at the organizational level, the task is at the organizational level. if we create the task at the workplace, then the task or that signing off process is managed by the workplace. So again, it's not saying that there aren't relevant times where that behavior would be warranted, but just think about the administrative component. If multiple sites need to access the same record, is it going to be better for us to manage it at the organizational level so that we can have that single source of truth? When we create, the task is created. So once we put an expiry date within the system, you don't need to go and create a task on the dashboard. It will automatically be created within the platform. So when we upload a chemical, if we put the SDS issue date, a task will automatically be generated for 5 years post that issue date. When we upload a document and we go into the document to set a review date, then the task will automatically display on the register. So once we sort of manage the record, know that other things will flow on from that sort of management to ensure that the appropriate sort of stakeholders are being reminded when it needs to be updated and reviewed. So the benefits, again, we've touched on these sort of briefly as I've spoken through these modules, but there's reduced administration. Again, you could do a times analysis to sort of work out what the actual return on investment is by using the platform in the reduction in administrative time at your workplace level. So that's something that sort of I know a number of customers have done to be able to justify sort of the expansion of the product across their organization. But importantly for yourselves, there's also confidence that obsolete information isn't present. So again, if we've got a document within the system and that's our most current document, when your workforce go to Safety Champion to access the document, you know that they're accessing the most current document, as opposed to if documents are stored sort of in a folder or they're stored in a SharePoint site and there's not that document control process in place. Again, you may not necessarily have confidence that you've got the most current record available to your workforce. So just stepping through each of these modules, what I wanted to do was just talk through some of the highlights and hacks that can ensure that you get the most out of each module. So starting off with the chemical module, the chemical module, again, will reduce its admin as the SDS is only updated once. So when you upload the SDS at the org level, share it out. Moving forward, you'll only need to update at the organizational level for the workplaces to be able to have access to the SDS. I can anticipate that some people would be maybe sitting there thinking, yes, but there's different volumes at each workplace, so we've got to get the workplace to manage the SDS so that they can manage the volumes. We've actually built the platform out that you can share the SDS, but you can allow the workplaces to control the volumes of the chemical stored and the locations where it's stored. So you can leave those things that are important workplace decisions to be made, but manage the record at your level. Offline access via the apps, again, means that anybody can access your SDS and your chemical register from their pocket at any time that they need. And one of the really nice features, I think, from this module and sort of my previous experience as a safety manager working internally was that the development of your safety data sheet folder is often a prescribed requirement through the regulations. So we do it because it's a legal requirement, but the value sort of that's often missed is how do we communicate back to our workforce as to what are the physical, the health, the environmental challenges or dangers that may come with the chemical, because we're just focused on keeping the folder of chemicals up to date so that when the regulator comes in, we don't sort of have a notice written up. So we've taken this one step forward and we're presenting sort of within the register those hazard statements so that when a worker has access to the system and access to a chemical, they understand what those potential impacts of that chemical are. So if I just jump into this module to walk people through, so the chemical module can be accessed by clicking on the menu button and clicking on chemical. This will take us into the chemical register. Now, I have 3 tabs across the top, and one of my slides towards the end is going to talk you through that for those people that need to create chemicals and edit and manage chemicals, they will need to go onto the chemical list. This will take us into the list of where your chemicals are stored. Now, what you can do as an organization is click on Add a Chemical, and this will take you into a form where you're able to fill it out and put the chemical name and grab the proper shipper name, the supplier name, emergency contacts. And if you're not sure, you can hover over this and we'll provide some tooltips to sort of guide you through. Again, the way that we determine what the hazard statements are is that all chemicals sort of now should be GHS classified. So if I click on GHS classified and click in here, we've pre-populated all of the hazard statements. So if you go to section 2 of your SDS, this is where you'll normally find that information. So you can go through, click on here, type in 202. It'll show you what the hazard statement is, check that box, and it will be pre-populated within the system. Again, you'll also be able to look through the SDS and sort of see, is it hazardous, is it dangerous? And again, this information will be transferred onto the register. Again, transport information, which is available around section sort of 14 or 15 typically, is where you can grab UN numbers, classes, and again, we've pre-populated this information. This doesn't differentiate between different customers or clients. So stuff that is consistent, we've built in to take that effort away from yourselves. Again, this is where you can upload the SDS, and rather than having people try to calculate the expiry date, what we've said is put the issue date in there, because 5 years from the issue date is when an SDS will typically expire. So again, this allows you to put that data in there. Now, once the chemical's been created, again, if I go back to the register, this is where you can control who has access to the chemical. So just so there's some awareness here, these allocations will let you know if it's been allocated to a workplace, if it's been allocated to the organization, or a red bullet will say it hasn't been allocated yet. So nobody in your organization can see this chemical. What we need to do is we need to click on allocate, and then we can go through and we can allocate the chemical to different workplaces. Now, if you've got a couple of workplaces that need the chemical allocated to, you can see I've just checked on a checkbox here, and then I can bulk allocate it. So if I'm an organization with 3 environments like I've got in this demo site, it's probably not sort of too exciting, this bulk allocation. But if you're a client with 300 workplaces, again, this functionality is going to save you a lot of time in the allocation process. If I go back to the module here, once we've allocated the module, then that will display on the register. So I didn't allocate that, so that's why the bullet is still red. What I spoke of beforehand was an ability for the workplaces to be able to adjust their own chemical. So if I morph down to Melbourne, for example, so what I'm doing here is I'm shifting my access from being an organizational user, and I'm bringing myself down to a workplace user, and I can see that in my access point here. Now, I might have switched my access off to be able to view chemicals at the workplace level. So if I go into Brisbane, for example, okay, so I would have adjusted my access to Melbourne, so we'll just ignore the Melbourne one and we'll jump into Brisbane. This is the information I'm wanting to share with you. So when you come to a workplace level, what we can see is there's some different access here. So this one here is a chemical that's been uploaded by the workplace. That's why you're able to see the delete and the archive button. They manage this chemical, and this task will be something that they're accountable for. The other tasks here, which if we hover over here, talk about allocated to the workplace. So at the organizational level, we've said workplace, you need to access this chemical. This is displayed by the yellow dots, and this is why we don't have delete or archive permissions. But what we do have, again, is the ability to edit the locations. So when I go in here, I can't change any of the metadata on here, but I can go into a location and say, for our organization, we have that chemical in the back room. We have, on average, 100 kilos, but our maximum amount is going to be 200 kilos. Now, I know I've left that as 20 kilos, and I've done that intentionally because when I put a number in, a max lower than the average, the system's going to prompt you. So if I go back and change that to 200 and add it, it's going to add it into the system. And these are some of the smarts that we build into the platform that you might not recognize and realize, but it's protecting sort of the data integrity and the quality of the information that's being captured. So once we go through and add that, then those new adjusted quantities will display within the platform. So this is our chemical module. So this module is great if you want to provide people with access to your SDSs. And again, they display here and can be clicked on and will open up. Again, if it's on your phone, it'll open up sort of directly onto the phone as well. And this is what I was talking about in relation to hazard statements. So to guide the user as to what are the physical hazards, what are the health hazards, and we switch through to one that might have environmental hazards in there, and what are the environmental hazards. So we'll capture that information based on the data when it's created. So if I move on now to our documents module. So our documents module, again, as I've mentioned a couple of times, allows your workforce to access documents out in the field. So think of this as policies and procedures, safe operating procedures, operational templates. I'd encourage people to expand so they're thinking outside of these are our safety documents into what are the documents that our workforce need to be able to do their job out in the field or do their job at our workplace. So that might extend beyond safety. Again, there's a couple of different views here when you're going via the app. You'll sort of see there's the ability for people to have folder view, and there's the ability to have a list view. And this functionality is something that we're going to reintroduce back into the web application over the coming months. Version control is massive for this module. It's sort of one of the functions that we're really excited about, and we want to highlight to customers so that they're aware of it. So what we do within the platform is that we allow you to update the policy and procedure or the document over time. And in the background, we will capture the history and the versions. So you don't need to worry about saving version 1 of the document. That'll be snapshotted within the platform for you to be able to access at a later time. And I'll show you this when I jump into the system. There's also a great feature where you're able to link a document to our inspection module or our notice board module. So if people are using the inspection module to do safe work method statements, for example, there's the ability for you to link up the template. So you can save the document, the safe work method statement template in the documents module and have it linked up to the inspection module. And again, that linkage is important because if I update the document, then it automatically updates in the inspection. And that's the same with the notice board module, and we'll touch on that later. There's also access to Safety Champion templates, and there's a tab in there. And look, this is useful for people who want to access safety documentation that they may or may not have access to previously. So this is an area that will continue to grow and evolve over time. They're typically standard templates that you can then pick up and utilize yourself. So if I jump into the documents module, so again, I click on the menu button and I go into documents. So I don't need to go back to home. I was in the chemical module. I can just sort of transition across. If I just start from the top here, I spoke about templates. So if you have templates switched on, you can click on here and there will be a list of templates that are available to you to copy. So in this dummy environment, it looks like they've all been copied, but there would be a blue copy button here. Now, what we do is that we will, on occasion, update these documents in line with different requirements. And when we update a document, we don't push that update through to you. That update will sit here with an orange button that you can then click on and you can update. You own the documentation, so we don't want to be changing things behind your back. So this is the template module. Again, I would encourage when you're looking at your configuration that this is switched off for people who don't need to access templates, because what it may do is it may cause some internal confusion if they're looking at documents and they're looking at templates and not sure what's the right policy or procedure for us. Now, if I click on our documents, so this is a collation of all of the documents that sit within your management system. And we add a new document by clicking on plus document. Now you can configure the folder. So is it a safety document or is it a operational document? And then you can configure the document category, and these are related. So what the document type and the category are related to each other. And if I just go into policy there, you'll see that there's a different drop down here. You then put in the document name. Now you can create a custom version. We know that customers come to us and they might have a policy that is version number 6. So rather than start as the system generated version number 1, you can then put in number 6 here, and we will capture your version, but we'll also capture the Safety Champion version within the platform so that there's no confusion if people are going, why have we only got one history, but we're at version 6? We can enter the issue date for the document. And again, what you will find through our platform is that we have date validation. So I can't actually date a document for tomorrow. The issue date has to be today or in the past. I can put some notes in here and I can upload the document within the system. Now, once I've added the document, this is where I can submit and allocate. So if I just BootChamp, and then I put the issue date as today and upload a document into the system. And then I can submit and allocate. This will allow me to go and identify what environments need to access this document. So if I say Melbourne needs to see it, that document will now be accessible to Melbourne, but not accessible to Brisbane and Sydney. Now, when I go into the platform here, again, what we'll be able to see is the documents that have been allocated and not allocated. So again, similar version. So review has been scheduled. We'll have an orange dot. Documents have been allocated to a workplace yellow, and documents that haven't been allocated will be in red. So this will allow us to go through and identify this one is not accessible to our workforce. So we'll click on allocate and go and allocate it accordingly. This document here doesn't have a review date. So you're not forced to have a review date for documents. This is a decision that you can make as an organization. But if you do want to set a review date, then you click on the view, and then you can click on set review. And when I go into set review, we provide you with 2 options here. So you can set the review based on today's date, or you can set it based on the issue date. And again, and this is actually a great example in the sense that the issue date was 2018 and today's date is 2025. So if you're wanting to sort of go, well, why would I use one or the other? If I use today's date and say we want to do the review every 2 years, it's going to set the next review date as the 25th of February 2027. If I chose the issue date as the next review date, the system's going to go. So when we set the review date, what it's actually going to do, it's going to create an overdue task. So if you see that happening within the system, it's just going to be due to some of the settings or that within the platform. So if I go home, now what you'll see is that we've got that HR policy that's overdue by 4 years. So this is just a result of the way that you would have set up the review date. Now, you can go in and sign this task off, so you don't need to go into the module and update it. Once you've set the review date, again, it's going to display on the dashboard. I can click on sign off, and then this will take me through the sign off sequence where I can sort of determine we've reviewed the document as a management team. This document is suitable, so we don't need to add a new version. Or we review it and we go, do you know what, there's some opportunities for improvement, so we want to add a new version. And what this will do is this will change the workflow depending on what our requirements are. So if it's no, you'll find it goes to next. If we say add a new version, it's going to encourage, or it's going to guide you to upload the new version of the document. So calculate the next deadline date from the due date in this instance. So again, we will need to go through and edit that if we wanted to. So if we go back to the document module and we go to the HR policy, or was it the document. I think it was this one here. And then we click on versions. Oh, sorry, we click on review update. Again, we can change the update if we needed to put it more into a cycle that's going to reflect what we need. There's the ability to edit. So if I click on edit, again, I can change the metadata here. One thing that I can't do within the system is I can't go through and change the attachment. And this has been designed to protect you, because what we want to do is we don't want you to delete version 1 and replace it with version 2. We want you to update version 1. And the reason why we want you to do that is that we want to help you capture the version history. So if I go to a document like this one here, that's a drug and alcohol procedure, and it's saying it's version 7, and I click on view, what you should notice if you're depending on access is that there's a versions button up here. So this is the metadata associated with the current document. I click on versions, and this will show me version 7, version 6, version 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And the reason we can do that is because we make you, or we guide you to update a new document every time that document changes, rather than edit the initial record and delete it and put a new record in there. We aren't able to snapshot that information. So again, this is designed to give you that full version history of the document. Whilst I'm in here, the history will also display when it was signed off, who signed it off, and any details they want to capture when they review that document. So again, we're at version 7 here. So it's been updated 6 times. So version 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4, through to 7 is 6 times. So it will let us know who updated it and any detail they captured. And we also have a folder where you can capture any consultation. So you may or may not want to use this, but if you review a document with a cohort of workers and there's some information behind why the change was made, again, you can capture those consultation notes within the platform here. So this in large is our documents module. Now, if I move on to the insurance module, so our insurance module, again, is another great module that you can use to manage both internal and external insurances. In addition to that, sort of what we've noticed customers use this module for is to extend past those insurances to manage things like registrations of fixed and mobile plant. You may look to manage contractor training and licenses, and there's an array of other information that you may use this module for. This module, the reason why people have used it to manage contractor training and licenses, if you're sitting there scratching your head, is because this module links up to the contractor module. So in the contractor module, we can link an insurance task or activity, so it sits against that contractor. So you've got sort of all of the information associated with the contractor in one place. This module is a module where you have access to custom questions. So if I select a classification as insurance and a subclassification as workers' comp, there may be questions that we may want to capture there. We may want to capture who the issuer of the insurance is. We may want to capture what is the total amount. So if I don't look at workers' comp, but I want PIPL, I want what is the coverage? So we can contextualize those questions to align with what your needs and requirements are. One of the cool things in this module, again, is the ability to link it up. So when we link on the holder's name, again, and we type in this example, Steve, this is an example of how you can link up this workers' compensation insurance to either the contractor or a particular contact of the contractor that's been captured within the system. So if I jump into the insurance module, so insurance and registration, again, I can dive in and I can click on this list view, and this is where I can create the insurance within the system. And as I mentioned with custom questions, if I say it's insurance and PIPL, then the system will open up some custom questions here that are specific to this. If I change this to license, you'll see that these custom details change. So again, this is what you can do in configuration. I'll touch on that very briefly towards the end of today's session. With the insurance, sorry, what I was going to also do in there is the holder. So this is where you can control, do we want to link it to everybody? So both human resources and contractor, or do we want to type in like a particular name? So we might not want to link it and just say this belongs to ABC warehousing, or we might want to say we want to link it to a contractor. And as I went in there, we want to link it to Steve's. So we say this is associated with Steve's cleaning. So the insurance module allows you to capture insurances, like I said, registrations, and sort of and any licenses that might either be licensed to operate, or it might also be licenses or training of your contractors. Now, if I just touch on the contractors to give you a view as to what that looks like, when I click on a contractor and I go to Steve's Cleaning, which is the example I just used then, and I select on view, again, this will give us the view of the contractor, but these links is where we will see linked safety plans or linked insurances. So this is where we can capture their PI, PLE information. So we don't have to like look at the contractor, go to insurance and see what's going on. We can go into the contractor contact and we can see sort of this relevant information to them. I'll click on the home button this time just to change things up. This will take me back to the dashboard. Now, if I go to the risk module, so the risk module in our platform is a corporate risk module. So this has really been designed for you as the organization to be able to document your understanding of how may people, property be injured as a result of our organization, and what do we as a business do to prevent that from occurring. Very, very simple sort of risk management process there. So we allow you to capture that at an organizational level and then share that down to your individual workplaces. So our action module is where you would report hazards. So if you're looking, somebody needs to report a hazard or somebody needs to do a risk assessment, there's probably other ways that you would do that within the platform. This module here is really being designed to help you manage your due diligence duties and be able to demonstrate as an organization that you understand your processes. It allows you to manage centrally, however, create a local risk register. So rather than, again, you having to sort of identify that these two workplaces have this risk and this control, you can share what you as the organization have signed off as a management team as to how we're going to control that risk. This module, importantly and very intelligently, allows you to assign risk owners. So again, not only do you have each risk as a line item within the module, but you can identify one or more risk owners. And that's really important so that as a business, you know who is responsible or accountable for making sure that that risk continues to be managed and continues to be reviewed. One of the other brilliant sort of parts with this module is the ability to be able to review by risk as opposed to reviewing the risk register as a whole. So what this means is that if you have identified that there are risks within your organization that are of higher value, so that might be just higher risks, extreme risks, you can review them on a more regular basis than a risk that is a low risk. So you may set your low risks to be reviewed every 3 to 5 years, but you may explicitly look at your high risks every 3 months. And the platform will allow you to do that, as opposed to a paper-based approach where you would typically pick up the risk register and review the whole thing at once. So this also allows segmentation so that you don't have to spend that sort of time in reviewing everything at once. So things sort of get missed or by the wayside as people try to speed their way through the process. It allows you to dissect things over a period of time so people can actually put value in that risk line item and make sure that things are being managed appropriately, as is what is expected and anticipated, I would anticipate from the management of the business. This module allows you to control risk matrices. It allows you to access confidential risks. So you can set certain risks to be confidential if you don't want them to be accessed by a subset of the organization. So by default, a risk that's loaded will be accessible to all. but there's also that option to say this risk is confidential and only people with confidential risk access can see this risk. And the custom questions, again, are available within this module, which allows you to build the module out. So if I just jump into the risk module, again, menu, and then I go into risk, and depending on where it sits, it could be the corporate risk module or the risk module. Again, we go into the risk list, and this is where, again, hopefully there's some muscle memory being generated here, that we go into the risk list, we click on the create or the green plus button, and this takes us into the template where we can create the risk. Now, what you'll sort of see within our platform, again, when we go back to what our mission is making safety easier and accessible for all people, no matter their expertise. We've tried to remove the jargon for those safety professionals out there that sort of want to talk inherent risk ratings, residual risk ratings. That makes sense to the safety professionals sort of using the platform, but it doesn't make sense for many other sort of users within the platform. So we've tried to use colloquial language, initial risk. What's the current risk? What's the future risk to replicate sort of those stages in our risk management review? So what we would do here is, again, we would identify the category and the subcategory. And if I use safety as an example and say it's a psychological risk, this is where you can identify what's the title of the risk, what's the risk, and what is the impact description. So why is this a risk within your organization? If we consider that risk, what is its current risk rating? So is it low, medium, high? And if you've got your risk register, you can upload your risk register into the system. Once we've identified the risk and that impact description, what are our current mitigations and controls? So what are we doing as an organization to prevent this risk from being exposed to our, like I said, our people or the people that are impacted by the operations that we undertake? So we can put our controls down there, and then we can go back and review the risk again. Once we've got to this stage, then we can make a decision. Are there additional controls? Like, is there something that we're going to do, but we need CapEx, OpEx expenditure? And if there is, like if we knowingly know that there's more controls that we can add and we have intention to add, we can say yes, and then we can document what those future controls are so they're not missed. We can then go through and reflect on what this risk rating is. The action, again, if we did have something that, again, is contingent on an operational expense or an OpEx or CapEx expense in sort of 3-6 months' time, we may want to create an action so we don't forget about that task or activity, and that'll remain linked to this risk line. We spoke about risk owners. So again, we can set a risk owner in here. So if I type in a name, again, it'll allow me to put a risk owner in there. Date is not reviewing the risk register. This review is reviewing this current risk. And again, this will also, if we say that the risk was the 23rd that we identified it, when I set this review date in the system, you'll notice that I can't set the review date before we actually identify the risk. So we'll have to forward date it beyond that. So again, just another example of that date validation piece that ensures that the quality of your data is held to account. We can then upload sort of any attachments or files that are associated with this risk that we want to capture against it. Once we've built out the risk, again, there's that submit and allocate button. So we want to send this off and we want to allocate it. Again, just given the nature of the BootChamp today, I won't populate this, but you'll see that if I do try to create without having all the data, again, I'm going to be prompted to the areas that I need to populate. So if I go back to the risk register, this is where, again, we can create the risk list within the system. The workplace list that you will sort of see here in the tabs is related to the risks that are being uploaded at the workplace level. So if your workplace environment has the ability to create risks, again, it won't populate on here and you can share that risk across the organization. As we mentioned earlier in the piece, the risk will be owned at the workplace and managed at the workplace level. So these are examples of risks that are, have either been allocated. So the yellow ones have been allocated by the organization, so it gets managed by the organization. The green one is an example of a risk that was created at the workplace. So the task and the ongoing management is captured at the workplace. So if I move myself down to Brisbane, because we can see that this risk belongs to Brisbane. If I move myself down to Brisbane and I go into the risk register, you'll see that that chemical storage has a little bit of different access here because they own it. So they can only view these risks, but at this level here, they're able to delete it. They're able to archive it. And if I go home and I filter for the risk module, there will just be the one task that they own within the system. So I'll morph back up. So this is our risk module. Like I said, I think it's a really important module for businesses to be able to clearly articulate how they've explicitly gone through and reviewed how their operations can either impact their people or the people who are associated with their processes, and clearly articulate what our controls are. One thing that, again, in my experience, I've seen is that not necessarily the right hand is talking to the left hand. So this is a clear way of making sure that everybody's on the same page, and then as a business that you can move forward with those controls. Plant and equipment. So our plant and equipment module, again, will allow you to upload a register of plant and equipment within the system. So think of, like, it might be your IT equipment, so the computers, phones that are being issued out across the organization. Might be fleet. So if you've got fleet or plant equipment, machinery, it might be access. So you're providing different keys and fobs to people. All of that can be captured within the platform. When we do add a piece of plant or equipment to the system, we capture both the unique identifier and the colloquial name. And this is important to make sure that there's ease of reference at your end. So having the computer in the system with its serial number may be awesome. And it's great from an audit perspective, but what it doesn't help is the actual who owns this computer. So we can upload the serial number, but we can also capture the colloquial name, which might be Megan's computer or Craig's phone or Claudia's laptop. So you can capture that. So how you know it internally makes it really easy for you to reference the piece of equipment. We can link owners to the equipment on the register. So you might say if it is Megan's computer or Claudia's laptop or Craig's phone, you can associate that piece of equipment to that person if you've got their details captured within the HR module. There's also the ability for you to capture purchase price within the system. So if you're needing to run reports on your spend on, like, maybe new equipment or new assets, again, that can be easily captured sort of through the export center. If I jump into the plant and equipment module, so if I go in here, equipment and asset, again, all our modules are configurable, so the names might change depending on your end. But again, that muscle memory, we go to the list view, and the list view is where we can create the asset within the system. So again, we can categorize it, and this is when we jump into configuration, this is what you're able to categorize. So you can say it's fleet and it's an SUV, or you might want to say it's access equipment and it's a fob. This is what you're able to control. Again, the title is your colloquial name. What's that internal name that's been attached to the equipment? So this is where we spoke about Megan's computer, Craig's phone, Claudia's laptop. The reference, again, can be the reference number that's associated with the plant. So you might have internal asset numbers. And the serial number, again, would be the serial number that's associated with the equipment. So we allow you to manage that across sort of two different sort of ways. Again, purchase date, purchased amount. Again, status, we allow you to control the status. So if you wanted to run a report on what equipment has been hired, what equipment's in storage, what equipment might have been stolen or donated, you're able to run all of those reports out of the platform. The holder, again, we spoke about that. So if I go in here and I want to put in a phone, I can say this phone belongs to Janelle Smith. So it's sort of captured against that user for your ease. Again, we can capture an issue date and we can also capture a due date. Now, this module is something that we are working on to provide the ability to associate more tasks with the item of equipment. But at the moment, there is one task that you're able to create per item of plant or equipment. Again, you can capture risk ratings associated with it. Again, if a risk assessment's required, then it will ask you, has it been completed, and get you to upload it. If no risk assessment's been completed, then it will allow you to, if you want, associate a risk assessment with it. You can upload images of the equipment so that it's very clear as to what that piece of plant or equipment or asset is within your organisation. And likewise, you can then go through and submit and allocate. Once you submit and allocate, then it will display on the appropriate list, as we've mentioned beforehand. If I go back to this list here, what we'll probably see, what we can see here is there's a lot of equipment that has been uploaded to a register, but hasn't been made accessible to the workforce. So again, depending on your business needs, you may just want to have a list of equipment in the background that you're able to manage, and it may not necessarily be relevant to make this accessible to the workforce. If that's the case, then we just don't need to allocate and we can leave it unallocated. So just a couple of things we sort of spoke. So record creation across all of those modules that we just touched on then, the record for these 5 modules of things that you see are created by going into the module and then clicking on the list tab. So go into the list tab and then click on the plus green button. From an allocation side of things, again, we can only allocate at the organizational level. So we can't allocate at the workplace because if a record's being created at the workplace, it's owned by the workplace. So we don't need to allocate it to them. It's inherent by that process. But if we create at the organizational level, what we can then do is we can then go and allocate the record to the workplaces where it's relevant to. So again, if you're a retail business where you might have shop fronts, you might have a warehouse and distribution center, and you might have an office. Again, the SOP for forklift management doesn't need to go to every single workplace. It would go to the warehouse and distribution center. And if you had a store that had a forklift for some reason, again, it would go to those relevant stores. So this is where you're able to control the information. Again, when you create, then you can explicitly allocate to the workplaces that need to be able to see that record. And that allocation piece, again, we've touched on it a couple of times, is this green button here. So we click on allocate, and then we determine who needs to be able to see it. Just whilst I'm there, that's the reason when you see in some other modules, there'll be a date. So when there's a due date, this is in our core modules, in the safety plan and inspection module. This is because we're allocating the task, and the task is going to be associated with the workplace. So again, that's why there's a subtle difference there if you're sort of a little bit unsure as to why sometimes is there a date and other times there isn't. Again, there's this bulk function, which I'll touch on in a second. So if you want to bulk allocate, you click on bulk, you then go and identify the workplaces that you need to bulk allocate to, and then you click on the button here and you can click on bulk allocate. And that bulk allocate can also be done to deallocate. So I click on bulk and I click on these two here. I can deallocate and that'll switch it around. Now, if I had to make a change to bulk allocate to every workplace, I could click on bulk and click on the square up the top here, and that would populate for all workplaces. Now, we have a feature coming in the next sort of 4 to 6 weeks where there will be a checkbox or a slider here that will allow you to say, allocate to future created workplaces. So if you know that every workplace needs to have access to this chemical, this document, this piece of plant, this risk, you'll be able to flick a switch here so that when you create the workplace in configuration, these are automatically allocated to those locations. We touched on bulk allocation beforehand. Again, this just allows us to allocate to multiple workplaces at one time. It's not super exciting when I show you for 3 workplaces, but where this does get exciting, if you've got 10, 20, 30, 50, 500 workplaces, this becomes a real real efficiency driver. Well, we might get started and back into things. A lot to cover in this second half. So the next section that we want to cover today are things that you engage with. So as I mentioned, there were two sections at the start. So we were looking at things that I can see, and now we're looking at things that you engage with. And it's important to note that these modules won't create tasks that sit on the active task register. But these modules are super important and fundamental to you being able to manage health and safety across your organization. So if I jump into the communication module, this module here is one of my favorites. What this module here allows you to do is to create commute templates. So this might be hazard alerts, this might be contractor pre-engagements, it might be induction information, it might be process updates, and it allows you to create the template. It allows you to create a set of questions if you need or like, so you want to capture information from the recipient. And what it does is allow you to send that out so that a HR record, a contractor record, or you can manually create somebody in the platform, signs off that they've acknowledged that information. Now, we have some great features that are coming into this module over the coming months, which will start to transfer this from just being emails to pushing it onto people's dashboards. So it's right in their face. And it's really clear that the business is expecting us to, or you as the user, to sign off or acknowledge this information. So if I jump into this module here, so again, if I click on the menu and I click on communication, this will take me into the communication register, and there are 3 tabs here. So the communication folders are where we capture the correspondence and the records that the HR record, the contractor, or the person that's been sent to has received the information and signed off the information. The template tab is where we create the information that we want to share. And the form is where we create the questions that we may want to send to the person when they receive the communication. So if I jump into a template, and if I use an example being a contractor pre-engagement template and click on view, what I can do is that I can build this out. And when I build out the contractor or the template, I can use text, I can use images, I can use video, I can upload attachments. Now this module isn't linked to the documents module at this moment. Again, so as an example of text, an example of a photo, an example of a video that's captured within the template. Now, if I go back to the communication, I click on the form. And if I go to I'll click on a new starter form here. Again, this is an example how we can create a question. So I click on here, create the question, define what my field type is. Do I want somebody to provide text, email, date, time? Is it a radio button or a checkbox? So this is where I might provide 3 options. And if it's a radio button, I want them to pick one. If it's a text box or a checkbox, I should say, they might be able to pick multiple. So I create the form there. Now, if I go back to the communication module here, again, this is where I can set up a folder. So if I want to set up a folder, which is a contractor pre-engagement, in this example, I can do that. And I click on view. This will show me every time that communication has been sent out. Now, if I'm wanting to send a communication out, I click on add recipient, and I can determine where do I want to pull the recipient from. Is it from the human resources? Is it from my contractor? So if I click on human resources, this will then allow me to go in and pick a list of names from my HR module. Again, this is a contractor that we're wanting to send it to. So I'm going to go to add recipient and click on contractor. And when I go to contractor, I'm going to identify who are the contractors I want to send it to. So I might send it to myself. Just give us one moment, please. Apologies for that. So what I will do is I will select on myself in this example, but I can select on multiple people. So if I pick on Liam and myself, and then I go and submit the template. So now I've picked the contractor and I go, who do I want to send this through? I go through and pick the template. So this is the contractor pre-engagement. So I select the response and set response. And then I can define who, when they receive it, do I want a comment, do I want a signature, or do I want an attachment? And I can make it optional or mandatory. So I might sort of not want an attachment, but I want to make a signature optional. I can submit and set form. And then once I submit and set form, what I'm able to do is go, what is my form that I want to use? So if I want to use contractor and worker information or new starter form, I can set the response there. And I'm able to then go through and I can determine what a button is. And I've got existing buttons that are available, and I can control the color and the name. But if I want to come up with my own button, it might be submit, but I want submit to be green. I can go in here and I can change the color to the green that I want to use. Now, once I've gone through and I've created the communication, then I've got it in a ready to send stage. I can either bulk send, which would see me click on both Craig and Liam, and then I can bulk send. And when I send, we have a new feature that we've recently introduced. So this was something that was deployed over the weekend. So for those who haven't seen this beforehand, this is the reason why. What we can do is we can set a schedule and say, we want to send this communication maybe on Friday, and on Friday, we want to send it at 9 a.m. And then I can send. And what this will do is this will then tell us that this has been scheduled to send at a particular time. Now, if I want to send it sort of immediately, I can cancel the schedulation or cancel the schedule for that user, and I can send it, and it will change from a scheduled environment to a sent environment. Now, what you will see when you go through, again, is that you'll click on view, an email will be received, somebody will click on the email, you'll get a viewed sort of acknowledgement, and then you'll get a closed acknowledgement once they've signed it off. So if I click on an example from beforehand that's been signed off, you can see it was sent, we'll see when it was viewed, we'll see when it's closed, and they'll update any information associated with that user response. Now, this module, again, like I said, it's one of my favorites because of the way that it interacts with other modules within the system. So not only do we get the record or the register of everything sort of on this register here, but we actually also, if I go into the contractor module and I go into Steve's cleaning where I've used beforehand and click on view and then click on communication, this will show us all of the communications that have been sent to contacts of that contractor in one environment. Likewise, from a HR side of things, if I go into the human resources module and I go into the communication, I can get a register of communications that have been signed off across my organization. Or if I go into an in particular worker, I can go into an in particular worker, click on view, and then click on communication, and this will show me all of the communications that have been issued to that worker. So again, this module is a great way of being able to demonstrate the conversations that have been had, and also for the worker or the contractor to be able to sign off acknowledgement that they understand that process that you've shared with them. The contractor module, again, we'll touch base on this one here, and we have jumped in and out of it sort of today through other modules, but this is essentially a repository of contractor information. Any tasks that are associated with the contractor are linked through other modules. So we don't capture contractor insurances within the contractor module. We capture insurances within the insurance module, and we link that up to the contractor. So you've got visibility of those insurances within the contractor module. Another special element of this module is the Filebox module. So again, this is a repository where you can record file notes or documents or attachments that are associated with the contractor. So if there's particular information that you're wanting to capture so that other people have access to it, this module is a great place for that. Again, and this module links up to the communication module as I just presented, the risk module. So if you wanted to associate a risk with a contractor, you could, and also the equipment and asset. So again, if you were hiring equipment, you may link that equipment back to a contractor who is the business that you've hired or procuring the equipment from. Again, the modules on the side just present the other modules that are linked within the contractor module. And if I jump into the contractor module, so I go back to the menu here and select on contractor. Again, we can go on contractor list. It's the same workflow as in other modules, and click on add contractor. This is where I can build the contractor details within. Again, in configuration is where you can control sort of different approvals and different contractor categories. The contacts is where we can put contractor contacts. So if we are wanting to send communications to a contractor, we need to make sure that they are a contact within the system. And we do that by clicking on contact. We put their name in. So we put their name in, we can put their phone number, email, and we just click these through and select on submit, and a contractor contact has been created. Now, once the contractor contact has been created, again, we can submit and allocate and say which workplaces need to have access to this contractor. If we use that retail example from earlier, and we may have a contractor who is servicing our forklifts, again, it would only be relevant for the workplaces that have forklifts for that contractor contact, that contractor, I should say, to be allocated to. So we go back to the contractor. Again, we can go through and allocate, and then if I select on a contractor here, so Steve's Cleaning is in 2 locations. It has 3 contacts, and these are the 3 contacts that are associated with it. And we can also capture the role of each contact. I can click on view. So this will show me the contractor contact and information. It will show me anything that's linked to the contractor. So any tasks that they may be doing, any insurances that we've collected on behalf of, from the contractor on behalf of the business. It'll allow us to capture any communications that have been sent to the contractor or their contacts that they've signed off on. And importantly, it'll allow us to capture any contractor files. So if there's any documentation, any file notes that you want to capture, again, name, description, upload, and attachment, or just put the name and the attachment or the name and the description, and these will be able to be captured against the contractor. The notice board module, again, this is an exciting module, especially for smaller businesses that may not have an intranet. Again, this really provides an opportunity for you to be able to contextualize the information that you want to share with your workforce out in the field. So could this be your intranet would be my first question. How do you share information across the business that everybody can go to, that you're able to control? The notice board module allows you to build micro content to share with the teams. So you're able to share videos, you're able to share external links, you're able to share images, so that might be posters or forms, and you can link to documents within the documents module. Some of the notice boards that we've seen, again, there's been an array of them, but like typical notice boards that we see are things like a mental health or well-being notice board where you can share information as displayed up in here. It may be a link to a Beyond Blue. It might provide you with a link to codes of practice. You may have identified some videos that are really relevant to your, not necessarily training information, but a repository of insights that they can go to learn more about a topic that you're wanting to support guidance on. Might be a legislation portal if you're wanting to provide access to different policies, procedures, first aid. So treating this like a notice board that you typically would if there was a hard copy notice board in a workplace. But as I mentioned, don't necessarily just think safety. Could this be your social notice board? Could this be where you share information about different awards that you've won as an organisation? If you have operational meetings that happen once a month, but not all your workforce can get there, could this be where you share the minutes from those meetings or the recordings from those meetings so that if somebody wasn't able to jump into the meeting, that they can go back and there's a repository of those meetings? And that can also be great for new starters that come into your business to build that knowledge of your organization by being able to sort of see certain things that are important to you as a business. Now, if I jump into the notice board module, again, there's a couple of places that you can access this module. So I just click on the home screen. So what you'll notice under our feed is notice board. So if I click on sort of the notice board here, this will take us into the notice board module. And if I go back home, just to show you the two paths, the other path is to click on the menu here and to go to notice board. So menu and then notice board will take me in. So there's two different ways that you can access this module. For those people who have configuration or admin permissions, again, you'll have this manage button displayed. Otherwise, the majority of your workforce will just see the dashboard. So we use this ergonomics one as an example. Again, this is where you could share different videos about what the safe workstation ergonomics look like. So you can procure this or you can build this out yourself. You might want to provide some information about why a chair sort of is important. You might have a poster that you want to provide access to. There might be self-assessment forms that you want to make sort of available to your workforce to be able to use when they need. Again, there might be an online module that it doesn't necessarily need to be, it doesn't need to be something that we need to capture their training or capture their completion of, but we want to make it accessible for them to be able to sort of diagnose and self-select and be provided with the answers or the solutions. So that's an example there. Again, if I use ergonomics as an example, maybe there's a ergonomic request form that you could build out. So in this module, there's also the ability to build out one-way forms. So you could build that out within the system. So somebody who needs an ergonomic assessment completes this form and it goes to the appropriate stakeholders. Or you may want to provide who your internal contacts are available here. If I go to something like the Human Resources module, again, you may want to provide access to the Fair Work Act. If someone clicks on that, takes them to the Fair Work legislation. Or you might have a HR policy that you want to provide access to. There might be certain forms. So again, this is where you're able to be creative to work out what's the right fit for yourself. If you're a business that's still managing leave forms on pieces of paper, potentially creating a leave form for somebody to be able to complete within the platform. And again, providing insight as to who are your HR contacts across the organisation. The mental health example we touched on, like fun facts. Again, if you've got interstate people, maybe there's some fun facts. You might have a map of that local area. You might provide access to your public transport. You may want to provide sort of some highlights. So when they do come and visit from interstate, again, they've got a place that they can go and sort of get some information from. And this might be sort of, examples of things that are really of interest to your workforce. You might be able to provide insights on these are the 5 sort of restaurants that our team love to go to. And so that there can be that cultural side of things that you can build out from within this module as well. When I click on manage, this is where we can build out the notice board. So again, this is where you will create the notice board. So you can see I've got notice boards here. So if I click on create, and I create one that might be for emergency management. And then we can categorize it if we like. We can put a detail in here. This is for first aid officer and wardens. And then I might want to submit and allocate and say this is relevant to all workplaces, or is it relevant to one workplace? You can make a call on that so that as you go through this sort of creation phase within the system. Once you've gone through that submission and allocate component here, what you're able to do is you're able to build out, there's an emergency management in there already. That's why I was struggling to get through. But once you're going to this emergency management example, what we can do is click on view, and then you can create the resources. So if you want to upload a document, you can upload a document. As I mentioned, this will pull the document from the documents module. so I can identify what documents do I want to sort of incorporate there. Alternatively, I can link up to YouTube videos. I can add a file, which is a document, or I might want to link to an external website. So again, if it was mental health and we spoke of facilities like sort of Black Dog or Beyond Blue, you might set those links up so people can access that. Or if it's a legislation update, rather than you uploading downloaded sort of files, you can link it up to the URL of Fair Work in this example so that you know that it maintains currency, and when there are changes to legislation, you're not the one who needs to keep that information up to date. So again, the notice board module is a really solid module that provides, again, you with a lot of creativity and a lot of creative license as to how do you want to share information across your workforce. Done right, this can also encourage people to get into the app and be more comfortable with the app, which means they're more comfortable potentially reporting incidents, reporting hazards, and doing other things that you want them to access within the platform. The site attendance module, again, this module here is a way that you can manage sort of signing in and out people. For the most part, that's what we built it for. But we've also noticing some customers use it for signing out products. So again, if there's a fleet, you may use it to manage your fleet in and out. This module is awesome from a QR code perspective, so people can scan a QR code. Again, first instance, it'll get them to download the app if they haven't done it beforehand, but then they can log themselves in and log themselves out, and they have a repository of when they've come into the site and when they've left the site. For those businesses that want to sort of ensure that people are on location when they sign in to the site, there is the ability, I should say, to set geo boundaries. So you can control that somebody can only sign in if they're within 500 meters of this location. We have some functionality that's recently been introduced that when somebody signs into the system will identify from their email and they will send them a sign-in receipt. So again, if they're on site, again, there's the ability that they can pull out their phone, go to their emails and demonstrate that they've signed in if that's a need for yourselves. We also have some new functionality coming in over the next sort of couple of months in this module as well, that'll link you up to the site manager. So when I arrive at site, I say, who is my site contact? There's going to be the ability for you to send an email to that site contact to say, hi, site contact, Craig is on site. So that there's those communication sort of workflows that are going to be managed. If I go into the into the site attendance module, I can click on the site attendance here, and this will take me into the module. Now in here, what we've got the ability to do is to create a form. So I can create an arrive form and a leave form. If this is the first time that you use this module, what I would encourage you to do is to go to the resource center and go down to the site attendance area. And then if you go down to the site attendance reference material, what this will do is this will be a step-by-step guide as to an arrive form example for contractors and visitors. What could your intro message be? What could your middle message be? What are questions that you may ask? What's the ending message for a visitor? What's the ending message for a contractor? So when they come in, they might be the same information we're capturing, but when they leave, we might have two sort of different endpoints. If I've got an employee, what's the employee leave form, sort of arrive form within the system? This information here will need to be contextualized by you, but it will guide you through. The process and make it easier first time around using this module. So if I go back into the module for site attendance, once you have built out your forms, so again, the contractor leave form, the contractor arrive form, the employee leave arrive, visitor leave arrive, or working out what makes sense to yourselves. What you can do is you can just go out there and build a register. So you click on site register here and build out what is my site register. This is where we can build out sort of the geofencing within the platform so we can circle what that looks like. Just being mindful of time, I might just go in and edit an existing one that's in the platform. So again, title, category, subcategory, we can make geo boundaries. This is where you can control, do we require a pin? Is there a geo boundary? Do we want to switch that on, or don't we not want to worry about it? We might not want to. We might want to, however, have a geo boundary on leave. So when somebody signs in and that they leave the premises, that if they're outside of that boundary, it can say, hey, Craig, it looks like you've left for the day. Did you forget to sign out? So then they can sign out. And that'll be via a push notification within the app. And you can control what this boundary looks like within the system. And just to, there's often the question, can we have the geo boundary so people can automatically sign in? If we were to do that, what that would mean is that we could track people all over the world. So we don't have that functionality. There are privacy permissions that that Apple and Android hold us to that mean that sort of, again, we can't track people so that we know they're on site to automatically sign them in. Once we've built out the site attendance module, again, what it will look like at the workplace level will be, there'll be the register that's available here. And then people will arrive and leave. So if I go into this dashboard here, what you'll be able to do is, again, the person signing in will be able to nominate if they're an employee, and you'll see this is a 3-stage workflow versus I'm a contractor or a visitor within the system. Now, if I'm a contractor and I go through, what I can do is I can put sort of my name into the system. And then the workflow here I can go through and create will be, you'll see it's changed into a 4-stage workflow now. So we can set up, so there's a video, you can create custom questions around the information that you want to collect when they come onto site. Once the person is signed in, they're going to display on this dashboard, and they will either sign themselves out or somebody at your reception will sign them out on their behalf. And again, you can create the question set for when they sign themselves out within the system. Now, if you find that in this example here, I've just had to answer some questions. If you find that you've got a suite of questions and understandably as an organization, you don't want to sign people out and answer those questions on their behalf, we do have a bulk function. So we can see that there are examples here of a number of people who haven't signed out of the system. What we can do is we can click on bulk, we can identify those people, and then we can do a bulk leave. So actually I might not do them all because this is a dummy environment, but I'll bulk leave these 3 here. And what will happen is that they will automatically be signed out of the system, but there will be this bulk leave notation against it. So what this is telling you is that they didn't sign themselves out, that somebody within your organization signed them out on their behalf. So when you go to export registers out of here, those questions that you've set up in your workflow are not going to be answered for obvious reasons. So that's our site attendance module. Like I said, for this one here, it's a little bit different to other modules. If it's your first time jumping in, I would encourage you to go to the Resource Center and download that guide and let that guide step you through. One thing we didn't touch on is the PIN register. So when we're using QR codes, again, what we have created, if you want to add an extra layer of security, QR codes can be shared and anybody can scan the QR code and then potentially sign into your organization. And that's no different with other QR codes. So they're uncontrolled for the most part. But what we've done here, understanding that there needs to be a level of control as to who comes onto site for some organizations, is that we've set up a PIN register. So when I go into and edit setup, what you'll notice there is that there's a required PIN. So you can switch that on or off. What the PIN allows you to do is to sort of set, when somebody comes to site and they scan that QR code, they'll be asked a question, what's the PIN for the site? And you can control the PIN. Like, it doesn't necessarily need to be 3 characters, but it can be 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You can make this as big or as small as you like. But this PIN would be part of that workflow. Scan QR code, enter PIN, and then I can sign myself in or out. What that means is that if people did share the QR code and you wanted to control access, you could change that PIN on a routine basis, so that, again, it takes sort of that extra layer of security as to who can come into your system. And data analytics is the final sort of module. And this is a little bit different. I just wanted to sort of, at a high level, just share some of the opportunities that you have access to in here. If I click on the menu and I go down to data analytics, again, we've set analytics up sort of by module. So if I click on the incident module, this will take me into the analytics section. Now, what the system's doing, it's going through and crunching all of the data that's within the platform and presenting it in a graphical way to help you as a business make decisions. For those who have been experienced with Power BI and those types of analytics sort of mapping function in the past will know that there's the ability to drill down into information. So I can click on here, and again, this will now resort this data. So rather than displaying it by calendar year, it'll start to display it by quarter or by month, and we can go deeper and deeper as we need. So we can see that's changed to information by quarter there. What you'll also see, and one of the areas that I often like to sort of point out when we are talking to safety managers, is that, again, a chart like this, sort of when presented to senior management, sometimes distracts the focus. The business will see slips and trips are our high incident category, but you as the safety manager may want to be putting a focus on mobile plant. And that's a hard conversation to have when they see this big sort of number here for this hazard. But the analytics allows us to take a deeper dive. So we can filter the data by high risk. And what this will do is this will resort this chart. So again, as the safety manager, you're able to talk to your stakeholders. And whilst this number is big, we can go through and describe that 2 are associated with high risk incidents, where mobile plant 7 are. So again, this is 3.5 times more likely to sort of have a high risk consequence. So again, that then helps sort of those decisions as to where our attention's going to be focused and where is money going to be spent. So again, we've really built this out to support sort of management make data-driven decision making. Similar with our audits and inspections, like the other ones, you'll be able to go, and if you use that methodology of drilling down and filtering, you'll be able to make sense of how things are managed. When we click on the inspections and audits, what I just want to make a note of here is this will give us a high-level overview of the inspections and audits that have been completed across the organisation. If I scroll down to our individual inspection details, what I'm able to do is right-click and then drill through. And what this will allow me to do is this will drill down to that template and show me every time that template has been completed. So in this instance, I'm able to see this has been completed 26 times. I can see what my performance over time looks like. But importantly, what I'm able to also do when I go down below is have a look at what's my performance by section and by question. So I'm able to now identify, is there a particular area where across my organisation, these questions are not performing as well as I would have anticipated, and as a business strategically put a focus to be able to ensure that those areas have been appropriately managed. So our data analytics is, again, a really great sort of addition to our module set. We also have the reporting module, which is more accessible to the workforce. And again, this is coming into alignment with data analytics. There are filters to the side here where you're able to filter the data. One of the areas, if you do sort of jump into the system at the moment, data analytics shows all of the data over time, where our reporting shows is pre-set up to filter by the last 12 months. So if there are some discrepancies, take a look at the filters, and that'll give you an insight as to sort of why the data may vary. Again, with 10 minutes to go, so I want to just cover off, as I did mention at the start, I wanted to touch on configuration. I don't want to spend too much time here. It is an incredibly important area if you are going into this, that you are fully across before you start to make changes, because the changes you make here will impact across the whole organization. But in configuration, again, you've got the ability to create custom questions and the ability to configure the drop downs sort of within the platform. So again, this should be access restricted to only a couple of key people within your organization. So we click on administration, we morph up to the organizational level. So a number of people on this call may not have access to this area, and that is okay. We go into the organizational profile, and then what we do is we select on manage, and this takes us into where we can configure the system. So down the side here, if we look at equipment and asset as an example, again, when we went through this dummy environment and the module's called equipment and assets, because that's what it's been named here. The classification list, the reason why we were displaying access, emergency management, fleet is because it was created here. So if you needed to create your own environments out, you're able to do that. The status list, again, this is all determined in configuration. So if sold is not relevant and donated is not relevant, again, you can delete that. If something else is relevant, then you can click on the green plus button and create that in. Risk ratings. Again, if you're an organization where you want to capture, is it a low 1A, low 1B, medium 3C, again, you can build out as many drop downs in this form as you like. So you don't need to stay with low, medium, high, extreme. You can control what this looks like to meet your needs. But all of those drop downs here are configurable. Now, we spoke about custom fields. So custom fields are when we create a question that's specific to a category or subcategory. So in this example here, if it was fleet, we can see that there's a question that's been built in because it's green, where if we click on custom for access, there's no custom value that's been added. For us to add a custom value, again, we would type in question. We would pick a field that represents our answer response. If it was like a nested decision tree type of response, then we would pick sort of multi-select or single select. If it was a checkbox, it means we could have 5 options and I pick one or more. If it's a radio button, I have 5 options, I pick one. If I use single select, for example, then we can go through and we can pick our options. So we might want to have the answer as option A and option B. And as I mentioned, this is a decision tree that we're going to go for here. So we're going to say, if I select A, I want the response to be 1 or 2. Now you can build this decision tree out how you see fit, but what it looks like in the system is that the answer will be A, and then they'll pick 1 and there'll be 1A. So you can go through and build this out as to how you see relevant for your organization. But this is just more to give you the flavor that there is these opportunities available to you. Should you be sitting in platform going, I wish it said this, there's a chance that we may be able to do it and it's already existing within your package. Some little tidbits, so things just to be aware of to finish things up. And I've touched on this throughout, but date validation is throughout the platform. So this tries to control to ensure that the information that goes into the system is the right information. We have an export center. So one of the things I haven't touched on during today's session is that within each module, you're able to export information out. So if I go into the contractor module, for example, and go to contractor list, you'll see there's an export center here. I can click on the export. I can build out a template. So if this is an export I want to do on a regular basis, I can create a new template. If it's a one-off export, then I can hide the template. I can filter the information that I want. So do I just want our Australian-based contractors? Well, then maybe I can change status to, or do I just want approved or not approved? I can change the status so that we'll only pull not approved contractors out of this export. So have a play around with the export center. All exports, when they're run, land in the export center. And again, this is a great feature, which means that once you've created a template, you don't need to go and create that template every time. you can just go in there and run the export. And we'll also have a repository of exports that you've recently run. So again, if you run an export today or yesterday, sorry, and you need it today, you don't need to save it to your desktop. You can just come back in here and download it. User permissions is something that we always like to touch on. So if you are, again, going up into configuration and providing different access to users, I'll just touch on the bottom two there, the difference between archive and delete. So archive means that we hide the information off the register. So it's been archived for access potentially at a later time. Delete means that we delete the history and the record from the whole system. So if you delete a contractor, again, you delete that contractor and any links to insurances or any file notes that you've had within the system. It's intentionally a powerful function. If you don't want that contractor to be accessible to people and it's no longer relevant to your organization, you can deallocate it so the workplaces can't see the contractor, or you could archive it, which means the workplaces plus that contractor then disappears off the list. Now, what happens if I go into the contractor and they have been archived? So I go into the list here and I can archive the contractor. So if I archive the top one, again, they will disappear off this list, but they'll display in this showed archive folder. So if at a later stage they become relevant, I can reactivate them and they'll move off the archive register and they will belong in the active register. If I delete the contractor, there is a reason why we've made it a hard process, because when I delete them, again, I've got to put the information in here, that contractor has been deleted out of the system. They aren't displaying on the archive or the active register. So if you did need to recreate them, you would need to recreate them within the platform as opposed to be able to access them in the system. Resources and support. So we have a great customer success team that, again, are there to support you to get the most out of the system. And one way that we do that is by building out a number of self-help resources and provide tier 1 support, so support requests. So within the platform, again, if you're not familiar with it, there's a question mark up here that will take you into the resource center. And we've segmented our resources by module. So again, if it's a contractor one, you click on contractor and it will show you contractor information. If it's the communication module, click on communication and it will show you communication modules information. There's a mix of videos as well as how-to guides. And we have a number of support tickets that each customer has access to. So again, that you will see if you watch this video at a later stage that this is changing at the moment. We're going to seek more information from you to better streamline the support process. Again, we're here for you. So what you should start to see rolling out over 2025 are BootChamp. So more sessions like this. We're looking to have one of these once a month. We're also looking to introduce masterclasses, and masterclasses will be a little bit different where we'll be focusing on a topic. And our next masterclass is ensuring compliance with confidence. So we're going to be looking at due diligence and how Safety Champion supports you to manage your due diligence requirements. We'll then have masterclasses on psychological safety and how Safety Champion can support that, how you can get the most out of contractor management. So really trying to provide use case environments. So jump into the training calendar for 2025 to be able to lock yourself in for that. We're also highlighting sort of on here when we are at the WHS shows, either in Sydney or Melbourne. If you're fortunate enough to be able to go along to one of those shows, please sort of look out for us, come and say hi if you are there. We love speaking to our customers and hearing sort of what's working, but also where are the areas that sort of you're looking for us to continue to evolve our platform. What we've got to come in the next half of the year is a concept, we haven't really phrased it yet, but office hours where we will highlight like an hour a week where we'll have a customer success team member or a support team member available for a webinar like this, where they might show a tidbit, but then they're mainly there to be able to answer or resolve any questions that you may have. So there's lots of stuff coming into the customer space to really ensure that sort of all of our customers get the most out of the platform. But we do have some packages as well. So if you are needing a little bit of extra support, we do have two different support packages that are available. So one is our recurring sort of package where, again, we'll provide access to more tickets a year. We'll build out account management within the system. There's assigned time. So there's either additional training or admin support. So 20 hours over the 12 months. We have some connections with some great HR businesses. Some of them are on this call today, as well as legal businesses. So if you needed to speak to a HR advisor about something that's going on with your business, we can link you up for an initial conversation with them. And likewise, legal advisor if there is a significant incident that's occurred where you may need legal support. For any of these things, we have unused tickets and unused time can get rolled into future years so that you're not going to lose out if you don't use it all at once. So again, you can have a conversation with our customer success team about those types of packages if that is relevant to you. We also have support packages where they're 4-hour blocks of time. And again, when we talk about 4 hours, that's 4 hours of face-to-face time with yourself, but there's also time that sits outside of that. That's why we've price these packages to take that into consideration there. So again, this is great. Again, if you're somebody who's new, or if somebody sort of today has come out of here going, we want to roll these 2 or 3 modules out, but we want to really accelerate that, engaging us to hold your hand through that process is something that we're here to support you with. And just to close it off, I'm a couple of minutes over time, but probably one of our asks from you would be to participate where you can in any of our in-application surveys or feedback. The customer success journey that we've built out for 2025 is being largely defined by what our customers are asking from us. If you want to collaborate with us on testimonials, if you want to collaborate with us on webinars, if you want to collaborate with us on awards, so you might be looking to go for an award, whether it's in your local council, it might be WorkSafe, it might be Safe Work or the regulator, reach out. We're really interested to have some of those conversations and how we can help you from a marketing side of things or a development of that submission. And obviously support us with Google and Capterra reviews where you can. We will be sending out an email at the end of this session. Again, we'll provide some links there. It would be great if you can give us a rating. Again, as I've got in that little slide up the top there, like alone we can do little, together we can do so much. So the more you're able to share about the positive experiences that you're having with Safety Champion brings more customers into our pipeline, which then obviously allows us to continue to build out our teams to provide more support to yourself, improve functionality within the platform. So as we grow, you grow. So if there's opportunities to be able to do that, we'd really appreciate it. Again, there's a QR code up on the screen. Would love feedback how you found this. As I mentioned at the start, this is our first masterclass or boot camp, I should say. I'll get the terminology right, otherwise I'll be in a little bit of trouble. But this is our first boot camp for the year. Would love to sort of get feedback as to how you found it. Again, that'll help us to continue to improve and enhance our offering back to you so that you can get the most out of the system. Just throw back over to Megan. Are there any questions that have come through that that you need me to respond to, or have they been managed by the...
No, we've got them all written down. We've answered pretty well everything. We've got one open, which the team will get to if there's a chance where we log off. That's all right. Otherwise, we'll get back to D-Penny.
Yeah, no worries. I appreciate it. And look, I'd also like to thank Megan and the customer success team for the work that they do tirelessly with you, our customers, and also our marketing team for helping us sort of prepare this calendar of events over the next 12 months. I really appreciate the work that they do and sort of allowing us to bring sort of some of these visions that you share with us to life. So thank you. There'll be an email that'll come out. We'd love your feedback. But yeah, enjoy the rest of your day, and I appreciate people logging in to participate in our first boot camp for the year. Thanks.